Hello, welcome into our On Campus with Game On Boys and Girls Lacrosse show. I'm your host, Jeff Beideman. She's Renee Washington. We're here at Central Bucks West High School, and we're talking state playoffs. All right, Renee, when the playoffs started out at the beginning, we had a load of area teams playing. We are now down to 3. And this year, going to the season, they decided to make 2 classifications in lacrosse. We have a large school and a small school. And 2 of our area programs certainly benefited by this. And by the way, it was a fair thing to do and a right thing to do. But the Gwynedd Mercy girls are still playing in states, and the Lansdale Catholic boys are also still playing.
Yeah, and Jeff, I can't forget the fact that Archbishop Wood, a team that last year barely had enough players to field a varsity and JV team. Not only did they make it to the district championship, they also made it to state. So hats off to them. I mean, they got knocked out, unfortunately, but we do have 2 teams.
Oh, just getting that far. I mean, geez,
Exactly,
considering where they came from, getting that far is a tremendous accomplishment.
Absolutely. And then for Gwynedd Mercy, in their last game against Radnor, we talked about last week, they were down 9-0 at halftime. And it was a tough game, to say the least. I mean, I was there, and there's not much you can do at that point. But fast forward 1 week, the tables were turned. They were up 10-0 at halftime over Cardinal O'Hara. I was not at the game, but for them to be able to have that win after a tough loss the week before, I mean,
Absolutely.
They came back focused and ready to go, and they were able to get a nice, easy, calm win, which is always good. And then not so calm, Lansdale Catholic. Oh, man. You know, I try to stay unbiased and just do my job, just record the game, get my interviews, but that game was crazy. I mean, it was rainy and chaotic, and those 2 teams came into the game as teams that don't really know each other, but it's safe to say they left as teams that are rivals and don't really like each other.
Right.
Because there were a number of questionable calls, a number of late hits after
Very
the play.
Physical
very
game.
physical
It was a very
game.
physical game.
And
right.
I mean, it got a little dirty at times, but for Lansdale Catholic, the first half, you could see they had the nerves and they were playing on emotions from being in their very first state tournament game in program history.
Right.
The second half, they settled in. I don't know what they talked about at halftime, but it worked because they came out, they scored within the first 3 minutes and didn't stop from there.
And they were pretty much off the races
and that was
from
it.
that point.
They outscored Eastern York 7-1 in the second half. It was an entirely different game. At that point, Eastern York was getting frustrated, and you could see that because they hit Lansdale Catholic's goalkeeper after the play, some very dirty plays that you don't really like to see.
Real questionable stuff,
it was playoff. It was a playoff atmosphere.
Right.
And for Lansdale Catholic, starting with the boss, Bobby Bossman back in net, all the way up to their attackers and my Athlete of the Week nominee, Grady Kelly, Mike Basili. I mean, a number of players, I can go on and on, that just stepped up. And for them to be able to get that win and advance to the next round, they're setting the bar high for Lansdale Catholic boys lacrosse program.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of setting the bar high, the 3rd team is used to playing at this time of the year. Central Bucks East has pretty much been the bell cow for boys lacrosse in this area. They're back at it again. Unfortunately, they're drawing maybe the best team in the state in LaSalle on Saturday.
Yes. And that game was also an exciting game in a different way. For Central Bucks East, they had 2 really tough results last week where they lost by 1 goal in the final minutes. I mean, they had games that came down to the wire, and that's something that the players spoke about after the game, is that feeling was still haunting them. They could still feel the pain of being in the game and then losing in those final seconds.
Right.
So they wanted to make sure they did not do that again. And Tuesday's game, they were the 3rd game in a list of 3 games that were being played at Northampton. And that game was an hour behind. An hour. Now, you know, for an athlete, that's tough when you're getting mentally prepared, and now you have an extra hour to warm up. And their coach had them in the parking lot. They were stretching. They were moving around. They didn't let that affect them at all. And it showed. I mean, they walked onto that field ready to go. They left the field, and they knew they handled their business.
Yeah. And
Ryan Brown, someone who we've talked about before, 4 goals, but he played phenomenal. And he even said he was feeling it. And you could tell every time he had the ball, it was like something good is going to happen.
Right.
And for the entire Patriots team, I mean, they had much like Lansdale Catholic, from their goalkeeper up, they played very well. And you could see they learned from those mistakes they made, and they came back ready to go, focused and ready to win.
It'll be very interesting to see how they match up with LaSalle on Saturday.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yes.
All right. That'll do it for this week's show. We'd like to thank Central Bucks West High School for hosting us, and also want to ask that you make sure to check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HS Game On, and make sure to check out all of our playoff coverage throughout the rest of the week. All right, thanks again for watching, and we will see you next week.